Excuse me, the live stream is started already?
No, it's gonna start in like 10 seconds. Yeah, it has started.
Cool. Can we have the first speaker?
No, wait. There is some problem with this. Okay, let me just send in these links in the group. If someone could get into the live and check if it's working or not, because it's not working for me.
It is working. I can see.
It is? Okay, it is.
Okay.
All right then. Cool, I'll start. Hello and welcome to the finals of the June online round. We have been debating for 2 days straight, and we have our Lions finalists now, which are teams L007 and L009. First of all, a big congratulations to the finalist teams for making it till here. We have heard really good things about you throughout these 2 days. So I hope this debate proves that as well. So we are debating on the motion. This house believes that fashion has done more for global unity than the United Nations. And yeah, that's the motion. And now I would like to invite the first speaker from Side Proposition to present their stance.
I will start on the self count of 3, 2, 1. Good morning, respected adjudicators. So, the motion before the House today is that this House believes that fashion has done more for global unity than the United Nations. Now, we are not here to say that the UN is useless or that fashion is perfect. We are here to say that fashion has done more in action, in influence, and in visible effect for global unity than the United Nations. And when my following speakers will explain how fashion has shaped identity, connection, and cultural harmony across countries, you will see that this is not just true, but it is undeniable. The burden of proof of the proposition is very clear that fashion has resulted in more real world cultural connection and unity across nations than the UN's diplomatic tools. So, fashion crosses borders naturally. From Korean streetwear to Nigerian Ankara prints to the global spread of denim, sneakers, bindis, hijab, gender fluid styling, and whatnot. These movements happen bottom up by people adopting, remixing, celebrating other cultures. Meanwhile, the UN, it holds summits, it issues statements, it passes non binding resolutions. One is building identity while the other is just building meaningless PDFs. So let's talk about reality. When Russia invades Ukraine, the UN condemns it. When Israel bombs Gaza, the UN urges restraint. When countries commit genocide, oppress women, crush protesters, the UN often does nothing at all to stop it. Sanctions are ignored, resolutions are vetoed, statements are watered down. The UN only acts when the 5 permanent members allow it, and they almost never agree. Meanwhile, fashion continues to move, connect, and evolve. No permission required. In Iran, women wore their hijabs differently to protest. In India, Dalit youth wear denim and gold to reclaim power. Black Lives Matter had protest fashion. Pride is powered by clothing. Farmers' protest in India had unifying dress code. Fashion has become the symbol of rebellion, identity, and solidarity across borders. Let's not pretend that the United Nations is neutral. It was built post World War II by the victors, and it still reflects the Western geopolitical power. The 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, P5, include the US, UK, France, all former colonial powers with veto rights over global action. Resolutions that protect US allies get blocked. Resolutions against Western states are never passed. And global South voices from Africa to Latin America are heard last and ignored first. The entire system is designed to maintain post colonial order. Now, compare that to fashion. Yes, fashion did had a Western center, but in the past decade, it has been decentered by the global rise of K fashion, Nigerian prints, and Indian fusion, where black, brown, queer, plus size creators on TikTok and Instagram aesthetics are creating new forms of fashion. And decolonial fashion movements have now gotten all the rage. Let's not just talk ideals, let's talk data from the UN itself. According to multiple UNDP and UNESCO reports, the majority of peace building projects fails to create long term unity between ethnic or national groups. Over 60% 90% of post-conflict zones fall back into division within 5 years, often because the UN's effort remain elite level negotiations, not grassroots healing. Despite decade of conferences, global xenophobia, racism, cultural nationalism are rising, including in the UN member states themselves. In fact, the United Nations General Assembly is made up of 193 countries, but over 70% of all speaking time and resolutions are monopolized by just 25 of them, according to Global Governance Watch. The rest, they are just token representation, structural imbalance, and symbolic seating. Now contrast this with fashion. There is no fashion assembly, and yet streetwear in Tokyo mirrors Johannesburg. Paris runways feature Indian silhouettes. Young people around the world don't wait for diplomacy to recognize their identity. They express it, wear it, and share it. Fashion has become the most decentralized, inclusive system of global visibility without needing translation, treaties, or veto power. The opposition wants us to believe that a room full of men in suits guarded by veto power and diplomatic platitudes has united the world. That's quite cute. But when we wait for another strongly worded statement, fashion has already crossed borders, broke binaries, and stitched cultures together, all without needing a single committee meeting. So sure, let them cheer for paperwork and protocol, and we'll cheer for the people who actually showed up, and that's why we proudly propose.
All right. Thank you, speaker, for your speech. Now we give a minute to the next speaker in line. Second speaker side or first speaker side up, please present.
Right. Am I audible, visible, everything? If you could do me a favor, you could share the timer on the screen. Would that be possible? Because it just helps me keep track of it. Right.
It's echoing a lot.
Yeah, that is.
Speak now.
Uh,
Just give me a second.
right.
It won't echo now.
Right. Starting on the self count of 3, 2, 1, go. The proposition suggests that fashion, a commercial industry rooted in trend cycles and consumerism, has done more to unite the world than the Almighty United Nations, a legal diplomatic body created for the very purpose of fostering international cooperation and conflict resolution and shared human rights. This comparison is not just flawed. It deeply misunderstands the very basic and normal difference between cultural influence and institutional unity. Now, I would like to start off by defining the burden that falls on the opposition. Our burden is to prove that the United Nations, through its legal frameworks, peacekeeping efforts, and norm-setting institutes, has contributed more significantly and sustainably to global unity than passion ever could. The opposition must show that UN has led to more cohesive and international cooperation and mutual legal and political understanding than the UN, a high burden that no one else can meet. I would like to secondly define the key terms of my line of argument. Firstly, global unity refers to the sustained legal, political, and social alignment of nations towards peace, mutual respect, and collective responsibility. Fashion in this context is the global clothing industries and its cultural products, including its influence over identity, trends, and aesthetics. Right. So, starting off by rebuttaling to the first speaker of the opposing side. Right. You said that in the Russia-Ukraine war, UN has done nothing. Well, let me tell you, the United Nations Humanitarian Rights Council has held multiple meetings for the same and has come to constructive legal nuances. That means that the Russian Federation and the Ukraine state entity can only be stopped by legal scrutiny and international scrutiny, which is done no better than by the UN. So you also said that women, there's not being nothing done for the women. Well, the ECOSOC, a principal organ of the United Nations, has a principal body under it, the UN Commission on Status of Women, which has been working tirelessly uh, while declare while maintaining its reputation as a legal standard by maintaining documents such as the Beijing Declaration, for example. Right. So my first coming back to my first argument that UN has built enforceable legal system and framework that underpin international cooperation. Unlike passion, which operates on soft influence, the UN work through legal obligation. Consider Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, which allows the Security Council to take binding actions. The International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court resolve disputes between states and hold individuals and states accountable for crimes like genocide, which fashion never could. Ne- Next, talking about an economic practice that is arbitration. This has been very effective in solving trade peace problems and intellectual property right issues. Treaties like the UN Charter, Geneva Convention, the Refugee Convention, such as the 1951 Convention, and the 67 Protocol, which is an addition to the principle. Lastly, talking about the principles that the UN has presented, the principle of deterrence, which has stopped the nuclear wars multiple times, the principle of proportionality, which has in the times of war has prevented states to be harmed than more than they should be. Right, taking Paris Agreement into consideration, signed by 190 plus countries under the UN Framework Convention on the Climate Change. That is not cultural alignment, that's legal convergence towards saving the planet, something fashion I could never see. Second argument being fashion often perpetuates global inequality rather than resolving it. While fashion is sometimes seen as culturally unifying, legal and economical, it is often enriches global divides. Labor exploitation is rampant in fashion. Garment workers in Bangladesh or Cambodia routinely paid below minimum wage. This violates core labor rights under International Labour Organization, a UN agency, to point to be noted. Secondly, cultural appropriation. Fashion brands using sacred or indigenous designs without consent violates the UNESCO's Convention on Cultural Diversity. Thirdly, the industry produces over 10% of the global carbon emission. Right, finishing my point, undermining the climate goals established by the United Nations, which you are opposing. Thank you and thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for your speech. Now giving a minute to the next speaker in line. All right, minute is over. Second speaker side prop, please present.
Yes, sorry. I'll take a self count of three. 1 second, sorry. Yes, I'll take the self count of three, two, one. Good afternoon, respected members of the House and our worthy and misguided opposition. Fashion doesn't just clothe us, it connects us. While the UN promises unity, fashion delivers it. The opposition is showing you a dreamland, but our reality isn't a dreamland. The United Nations is a power based, biased institution dominated by the US and NATO through Security Council. It fails to stop wars, ignores suffering, and only acts when it suits powerful nations. From Gaza to Ukraine to Iran, the UN watches but does not act. Fashion, on the other hand, is borderless, timeless, and people driven. It does not need approval, votes, or diplomacy. It connects cultures, empowers voices, and has always existed from the Silk Route to the streets of Seoul. Where the UN preaches unity, fashion lives it. Our key stakeholders here are everyday people, especially youth, creators, and marginalized groups who are excluded from the UN decision making but deeply connected through fashion. Whether it's a girl in Bihar dressing goth or a hijabi model on Vogue, fashion gives them a voice, identity, and unity. Unlike the UN, which serves the powerful fashion, which serves the powerful, fashion serves the people. Now, let me establish the burden of proof here. The proposition must prove that fashion has done more for unity, socially, emotionally, and globally, and the opposition must prove that the UN has done more, and that fashion's impact is less meaningful or inclusive. Now, moving on to my constructives. My first claim here is that fashion sparks unity-driven action, and the UN struggles to move beyond statements. Our warrant here is simple. Fashion turns solidarity into something people can see, wear, and join. The UN, tied down by politics and veto power, often fails to act fast or act all. The mechanism that we follow here is that A, protest symbols become wearable, like BLM shirts, pink hats at Women's March, and then B, people across cultures adopt them, creating visibility and viral unity. And C, movements grow from the ground up faster than any UN-led initiative. For an example, let's take the Black Lives Matter T-shirts. They became a global anti-racism symbol, and from Delhi to Paris, people wore them, no permission needed. Or take Iran 2022. Women globally cut their hair for Masa Amini. It wasn't a UN resolution, it was a fashion-led improvement. Palestinian keffiyeh, once political, is now a global symbol of resistance and identity, worn on runways and in protests. And the impact of this is that real-time solidarity, shared emotional identity, and grassroots unity that crosses border. No bureaucracy required. Fashion has an incentive to amplify causes because it sells visibility, belonging, and relevance. And the logic here is so simple. So, dear Judy, what do we see here, right? That if fashion can unite hearts before the UN can even schedule a vote, who's really doing the work of unity? Secondly, fashion is borderless and inclusive, and the UN is exclusive and biased. Our claim here is that fashion selects the whole world. The UN selects the powerful few. The warrant here is that fashion invites participation across race, class, gender, everything, and the UN operates within hierarchy, vetoes, and limited access. The mechanism that we also follow here is that A, global trends spread via social media, and B, clothing becomes a shared aesthetic uniting people beyond politics, and C, participation is voluntarily and expressive. Now, what happens here is that fashion gains more when it includes more, so there's more diversity, more reach, and more revenue. So, the opposition had one job, but their biggest flaw is assuming that global unity comes from political agreements and top level diplomacy. But the UN unites governments, not people. It passes resolutions while bombs still fall in Gaza, Ukraine, and Iran. Fashion fuses cultures and empowers identities, from Japanese streetwear in Paris to pride outfits and hijabi models on global runways. Article 2, Part 7 stops the UN from interfering in a country's internal law, no matter how oppressive. This is real evidence, not just theory, and that's why it couldn't act on India's CAA, China's camps, or Saudi's gender laws. To conclude, fashion united us through the Silk Route long before the UN existed, and thus we've established our burden of proof, and I've never been prouder to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, speaker, for that fine speech. Now we give a minute to the next speaker in line.
I'm ready. I can start.
All right, please present.
Just a mic check before that. I hope I'm audible and there is no background as such.
Yeah. You are audible.
All right, thank you. I'll be starting on a self count of 3 to 1. Greetings, everybody. Today I will be rebutting the ideology of the opposing team as well as proving our arguments. Now, the basic idea you have proposed is that fashion promotes unity. Fashion breaks us instead of connecting us. A poor girl who cannot afford food does not care about fashion. She cares about shelter, something that the bodies of the United Nations provide. A girl in hijab in Gaza does not care about showing her rights through runway walks. She cares about her safety. Moreover, those rights are guaranteed by United Nations. Example, the Geneva Convention. Fashion does not shape identity, and identity certainly is not equal to unity. Have you heard about unity in diversity? Fashion does not connect it. It often makes you hate yourself. Why can you not fit into a certain trend? You think law is a meaningless treaty? Then burn this. How do you justify the trusteeship council helping countries gain their sovereignty when all UN does, as per you, is appreciate colonialism? Fashion cannot be equal to identity or unity. A poor person in Nigeria does not care about a drive of fashion or a pride walk. They care about a body helping them to migrate, protecting their lives, which is the international humanitarian law and the United Nations Human Rights Council, not a bangle or a symbol that makes them so-called Nigerian. You say that United Nations is a body of secret-rooted men who do not know about world problems, right? So you suggest replacing them with a group of influencers who live in a utopian superficial world. Let me remind you, United Nations are formed by those very ministers and leaders of countries in which people like us have voted, and they are talking in the General Assembly, no one else. Thus, UN is me, UN is you, UN is us. It is all well to say that people promoting fashion is better than an institution when all that you are saying is utopian and superficial. Fashion is so open to ambiguity, and this brings me to my second argument, that fashion is so flawed that it breaks us instead of connecting us. Fashion has so many negative impacts. A person does not become Indian or is a part of the movement because they wear clothes like it, but because they believe in that cause, a cause that United Nations helps them into transforming into reality. You not become Indian by wearing khaki, you become by loving Bharat Mata and the Indian flag. Let me make this motion very clear. Here we are drawing parallels between an institution that has lasted for years, preserved the rights of people, including doctrines such as right to protection, right to self-determination, and fashion an ever-evolving baseless idea that just revolves around trends and that's it. A genocide is not stopped by waving a white flag. It is stopped by the Genocide Convention and the idea that there will always be repercussions if the international law is broken. In fact, the very basis of a society is law and a body to govern it from the starting of the Greek society. On the basis of this ideology of my opposition, a government, a constitution, in fact, the customary international law that is based on practices should completely be disregarded. On your ideology, if a person wears the color orange and steps into a mosque, then she should be shot because they haven't followed the so-called color coding. The very basis of this motion is flawed. How can you expect fashion, which in itself is a propaganda and nothing else, to generate profit, define the lives of people? Chapter 7 of the United Nations, which deals with action with respect to threats to the peace, breaches of the peace, and acts of aggression, does not need to exist as per you, because waving a white flag should be enough if a country drops a bomb on you. Fashion is a privilege. It is something that divides the society instead of uniting it. The starting of law was from Rome, first being good faith. The very reason why something like United Nations was born is because two wars have already been contested on the basis of the principle of moral faith, which actually does not help. Let us talk about accountability and practicality now. The Paris Agreement or the Kyoto Protocol, taking an example of NDCs, nationally determined contributions. Capacities give obligation to states to report the duty. This is just one body. There are several other bodies. During the COVID-19, do you think we would
Speaker,
have actually,
time's up.
just wrapping up, do you think we would have actually been able to fight with such a virus if the WHO was not there? Fashion is an industry of influence. The UN is an institution of law. And if you want to talk about real global unity, the kind that changes how nations behave, how people are protected, and how peace is built, you look to the UN. With this, I would like to wrap up my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, speaker. Now we give a minute to the next speaker. Please wrap your speeches up in time. Anything said after the 4th minute isn't taken into consideration.
Hey there, am I audible and visible in every
Yes.
senses? Okay, just a sec. Anybody audible to everyone? Visible to everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, on the self countdown of 3, 2, 1. Greeting to the Venerable Chair and well, my completely mistaken opposition. Unity is the sense of collision with shared views and identity. This is the meaning of unity. With that, I would like to reiterate the motion of the House that this House believes that passion has done more global unity than the United Nations. The entire opposition has nowhere proven the fact that where fashion was failed and where UN has made more impact than fashion. My speaker one and my speaker two has given spaces. Black Lives Matter, Silk Route, LGBTQ fashion brand trends. They have made it mention it that where fashion took place at the time where United Nations could not make the legitimate senses which they could have made and they should have made. That is where they have failed. Let's consider a situation that okay, fashion isn't perfect, but how much is UN perfect itself? That's the bigger question. You say that fashion has the ability to make or break people. You say that fashion has the ability to make self-conscious people. Okay, we do have that ability. We aren't as perfect, but we also have the sense where we give that resonation to people that okay, inclusivity is still present. But what does UN do? UN has laws. UN has different laws, but how much are they penalized for breaking those laws? The UN upholds international laws, but what happens when a country breaks the law? Very little. The US invaded Iraq illegally in 2003. No punishment. Russia violated Ukraine's sovereignty. Still sits on the UN Security Council. How does that make sense? Let's come to Speaker One. His entire speech was about how the work of UN is done. See, it took them more than 4 minutes to explain how much work a UN has to do to implement one law. And you think that a fashion trend, which can be communicated so easily, is not going to be more effective than those paper works. And let's just counter it for a fact that if it is so much credible, then what happened to Afghanistan? Did that happen anywhere? No, it is just dominated by the people. My speaker too very cleverly and very fairly said the fact that the UN chooses, but fashion gives the liberty to everyone. When we need the unity, then it is our right and it's our betterment to choose how we require it. Inclusivity, it is our right to choose how we require it, and that is why we prove it much in a much better way. Nowhere did speaker one or speaker two of the opposition came and made the fact that okay, UN has failed here, UN has been proven here, and fashion was the one who failed here. No proposition, no point from the opposition given, and if speaker three comes from the opposition and give no point, it will be very null and void. No net change has been given, no net change has been yet made by UN. Where do we stand? UN as an entity is still failing. Unity is a sense of collision which is done by clothes, which is done by connecting with music, which is done by connection with emotions, which clothes do, but UN cannot do it. UN encompasses law because it came for peace, and peace is not the sense of unity. Peace is only a section of unity. Unity was created by clothes in a much more manner than ever and ever could have the UN ever make it happen. Let's understand it simply, as said by my speaker one and speaker two. When UN came, it came for the peace. When UN came, it came for bringing and resolving the disputes which was happening in countries. And the speaker two completely said that UN is an institution lasting for years. My dear, fashion is an entity lasting for more than that. fashion has been existed and it has become a reason for global unison. Because have you heard of this thing called Silk Route, explained by my speaker too? Silk Route was a manner where people used to come and go, share their clothes, share their tradition, and be more globally united. It's a historical fact which has actually happened. My dear adjudicators, the entire proposition's main argument relies on the fact that how UN is doing so many things which is completely proven null and void by my first speaker's self-rebuttal itself. It is completely proven how UN works in papers, and those paper takes a lot more time. And in right now, in current and present time, the opposition has never proven it correct. With that, I would like to rest my case, but never mind. Thank you so much.
I can start in 30 seconds. That's cool.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can start right now. That's cool. All right. So hello everyone. I'm Vishrut. I'll be taking the third speaker, and I'll start right now. All right. So let's just make something very clear. Okay. The first line you people said, well, we were not here to say that the UN is useless. We are not here to say it. That's what the first speaker said. That's why all we were doing is we were being respectful and not saying fashion has failed or something like that. But since all your speech you have done is saying that the UN is useless, the first line you said UN is not useless. After that, the whole three speakers have continued to say UN is useless, UN is useless, fashion is useful, fashion is useful, all that. So at this point of time, I am just not going to keep in this good faith which you people are saying fashion is doing. See, this is where law comes in. Case in point over here itself. If it was not for me, if it was not mandated for me to not speak in between, I would have just interjected and said that you are going against your own first thought. I would have just said that. But then, since the procedure is not allowing me to do this, I'm saying this. Secondly, you people come in here and you people say that no bureaucracy needed. Okay, if no bureaucracy is needed, let's stop this Behesh debate. Let's stop UN. And after that, you're saying that it took 4 minutes for us to explain what the UN does. That is a good thing. If it takes you like half a second to explain what fashion is doing and these things, it takes you like no time. How are you going to explain it to someone in Ghana? And you not leave that part alone as well. Okay, if it takes someone this much time to explain what a phenomenal body is doing and it takes you like 2 seconds, that just means your body is not doing enough. You don't have enough substance to speak upon. All right, let's leave all of that aside for a second. All you people are saying is fashion symbolically helps us, right? Fashion is symbolically helping us. It is not just fashion. These symbolical representations are not limited to your clothing, are not limited to what is fashion, right? It is symbolical. How the Germania is symbolical, how is other things symbolical? Let's take the United Nations flag, let's take the Indian flag. My second speaker rightfully said it is you people are using fashion and linking it to symbolism. Symbolism transcends fashion. All you people are saying is somehow we will link symbolism to fashion, and then we will somehow say that the United Nations and fashion in fashion is winning. Secondly, coming to the point that everyone is accessible and fashion makes everything accessible. Okay, fine. I know what the Silk Routes are. I'm an international relations students. We're very well aware of it, right? So sure, the Silk Routes were uniting the world. Sure, the Silk Routes were doing all of this. Then, if the Silk Route was so effective, if fashion is so great, now I'll tell you where fashion is failing. If the UN and okay, let's assume that the UN is not working well. I don't see how fashion protests and all your Grand Prix and all your fashion fests are stopping Iran from bombing, are stopping US from bombing. Tell me, how is fashion doing this then? If you people are supporting fashion, tell me how it is doing it. You people are failing to tell me. All you people are doing is we are not here to say the UN is bad, but no, we don't have any other arguments. We'll just say the UN is bad. Okay, now we will move on to the other thing also. The next thing you people are saying is no. The next thing you people say is that it is accessible to everyone. For example, tell me how much does it cost to wear a Sabyasachi lehenga? It is not affordable to me, man. I live in a 3 BHK. I live in a good place in Noida. I cannot afford a Sabyasachi. My family has to think 50 different times before buying a Banarsi sari. And you people are saying, no, fashion is accessible to people in Ghana. Those people are making fashion below the poverty line. These people are earning money, and you people are saying, everyone is accessible to full chill. It is with fashion. This is just too much. This is just honestly, it is going beyond it. Now coming to the point where you're saying Article 2, Subclause 4 of the United Nations. Okay, firstly, I am a student of the I'm a student of international law. I have the UN Charter with me here. I'll just read you something. Okay, the UN Charter reads the first line: to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in a lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind. So tell me how World War II and World War I were not stopped by fashion. Tell me how was that? Secondly, moving on to the point where you're saying 2 224 does not allow UN to intervene. The reason you people are not understanding basic international relations. Why UN is not intervening? Because they don't want to harm the basic principle of sovereignty. Culture transcends borders because people look at reels. You and me know culture transcends borders. Go ask someone who is down there on the street what is the latest Instagram trend, what is the latest TikTok trend. Do you think they care? They are not getting drinking water and they care about terrain. No, man, what is this latest TikToker doing? What is this latest Instagrammer doing? Nobody gives a damn, mind my language. The very simple thing is that the United Nations is going place to place. United Nations peacekeeping forces, and you're saying the veto is not working. Okay, let me give another example. There's something called as a permanent court of arbitration. It works with legally binding resolutions. ICJ legally binding resolutions. Geneva Convention legally binding. Let me tell you, here fashion, nothing it is doing. All fashion is doing is rich people sitting in rich white houses. Okay, you are saying it is transcending borders and all Asian people are doing. Over there, it is basically rich and poor. It is not so west and south. That's where I rest my case, and you people are completely just ruining your own argument. Thank you so much.
Thank you, speaker, for that fine speech. I think that marks the end of this debate. This is the last speaker to side opposition. With that, we end the debate on the motion. All right. Now that the debate is done, I would like to invite the speakers to go ahead and discuss the motion a little more, and then we can end this